Welcome to Through the Looking Glass. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about psychedelics. But before we do that, as always, I'm going to hand it on over to Russ.
Hello, welcome back to Through the Looking Glass. Couple guys sitting down talking about all the fun stuff that's going on and different topics through everything. Yeah, kind of lost the train there. Well, please like, share, subscribe, comment. Let us know how we're doing, how bad we're doing. Give us some suggestions, maybe topics to talk about. If you want to come on, reach out to any of us. You'd be able to find us pretty simply. Facebook, YouTube, not TikTok because China. Yeah, let's get rolling. I do believe this is Adam's field of expertise, so he's going to drop some knowledge bombs on us today.
Well, you know, I've got a lot of experience with psychedelics. What's your guys' experience with psychedelics?
I'm pretty sure Jesse's experience is nothing. Yeah,
I had a pot brownie once.
you're pretty straight edge.
That's it.
I mean, cannabis in and of itself can be somewhat psychedelic. It's not like your typical psychedelics, but the experience that can come with enough cannabis, especially if you have no tolerance, can very much feel psychedelic, and it can even send you on what's considered a level 2 psychedelic experience, because there's 5 levels of psychedelic experience.
Interesting.
And level 2 is when you can kind of notice things starting to morph and shift slightly.
What level is Jimi Hendrix on?
Wait, which Jimi Hendrix?
He's beyond
the Elmira Jimmy.
He's beyond levels.
Yeah, that man has escaped. He is. What is the expression? Not chasing the dragon, but blasting off.
He is the dragon.
Yeah, he has all thrusters go.
So what about you, Russ? What are your experiences with psychedelics?
A few different things. I smoked marijuana more heavily when I was a teenager through my 20s, things like that. There were a couple of times where it was like, yeah, let's get as much as we can and see how high we can get, where there was a couple of fun experiences like that. Salvia and acid a couple of times, but those were strange experiences. I haven't looked too much into a whole lot of stuff, but from what I've heard about DMT, that would probably be a good experience if I'd be ready for it. I've heard some interesting things about peyote. And is ketamine a...
So ketamine's a dissociative, but it can be considered psychedelic in its own right.
I will at some point be looking into ketamine therapy. So... yeah, that's really it. It's never
What
been
was weird about your acid trips?
It was never really what people told me I was going to experience. It was never where I lost touch of reality per se. Things just kind of morphed and got weird. Convinced me, of course, that was like the reality around me, but it was never an experience where I went to a different place. It was just like...
more just aesthetic?
Walls melting, things in the road were waving and, inanimate objects kind of moving around. That's about it.
Yeah, Alan Watts talks about, because he was invited once to speak in place of Aldous Huxley, and Alan Watts' thing was always, you can't get mysticism out of a bottle. He tried LSD for the first time, and similar to you, he just had a simply, purely aesthetic experience. He said it was beautiful, but there was no mysticism involved until a gentleman later came to him and said, you got to do it again. Just like any tool, you got to learn how to use it. And he said his second LSD trip, he had undeniably what he couldn't not call a mystical experience. It definitely takes a quite a bit higher dose of LSD to actually leave reality and to lose touch with reality. I've been there a couple times.
What do you mean by aesthetic? What's
Just where
Visual.
you're seeing
aesthetic.
Yeah,
Aesthetics,
you're seeing all the colors.
Mm-hmm.
You feel good. You know, slightly heightened empathy. But yeah, the mystical experiences are. You can't exactly decide when you're going to have a mystical experience on psychedelics. It just kind of happens.
Yeah.
And when it happens, you just roll with it. And I think sometimes even a mystical experience could cause what people call a bad trip if they're unaware that it has the possibility to give them that type of experience where they're kind of in and out of their body. They look like they're in a different reality. Bad trips can also come from if you cross something inside of your mind that you've either locked deep down away or that you haven't wanted to face or confront. And if that thing comes to the front of your mind and you don't confront it in those moments, or you just try to run from it, you're going to have a very, very rough experience. I don't want to be one of those guys that's like, I don't believe in bad trips, because people very much have had bad trips. I just think bad trips are mostly people don't exactly know how to make sense of them, and that's why they consider them bad. I've had some very rough experiences, but what I got out of those experiences was so beautiful and life-changing that I don't think I could ever call it a bad experience. Old pain and trauma that I had locked away that came to the forefront of my mind that I had to deal with and work out. You know, I've had trips where I've been screaming and crying like a little baby to release some of this pain, but I think that was extremely necessary for me to actually release it and to not hold on to it.
So with things like Flocka and the deterioration that we see in certain cities, are drugs like that, are those hallucinogenic? They're
not necessarily psychedelic, but they can be hallucinogenic. If you take enough, you can start seeing things that aren't there. And
what's the difference between hallucinogenic
Does
and
that usually
psychedelic?
come when you've been up for 2 or 3 days straight? Or is it...
It can, but it can also come from a high enough dose of what you're taking. So things like Flocka actually are derivatives of bath salts, which actually that actually come from the cat plant. Like Flocka's alpha PVP. I've never tried it. I have done bath salts before, and they're not the terrifying monster that they were made out to be. The issue with things like that, where you see people losing their fucking minds, is they have no idea what they're taking, and they have no idea how much of it to take. So they're taking way, way, way too much, and that's what's causing them to go absolutely batshit insane. Set and setting and dosage are very important when doing anything. Know your body, know your mind, know your chemical, know your dose. If you're unsure, start small, work your way up. You can always take more. You can't untake what you already took. So...
Is there a good emulation to see what a psychedelic trip could be without using chemicals? Is there...
If you can ever get lucky enough to get deep enough into a meditation, I suppose.
Are you saying like experience it without doing it?
Yes,
or just have a visual representation of it?
Either one. Or both,
I mean, I'm sure there's books on what people have experienced, of course, and I'm sure you could find some videos on YouTube of people animating or depicting.
Yeah, that's more of what I was asking. Is there a good visual representation of what an average trip could look like?
I mean, you could get the visual representation. However, no matter how much you watch or no matter how much you read, you'll never, ever fully understand unless you've actually done it.
Yeah, because it's deeper than just the visualization, yeah? You notice that too?
Yeah. What's that?
They were unplugged from the power supplies. Whoops. Yeah, you're still centered.
All right, let me get Jesse's plugged in real quick.
Was it not recording?
No, it's recording.
Oh.
I just don't want the batteries.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Plug them in. Yeah, because it's a lot more than just how things look in the experience. It's what you're experiencing in your mind. I feel like maybe one of the closest things people could actually have to a deep mystical psychedelic experience is somehow in a sober state of mind experiencing God and having some revelation about God. That's probably one of the closest.
Have you ever seen the movie House on Haunted Hill?
I haven't.
The remake. I was gonna say when they're in the chamber, when they shove the dude in the chamber, and they have images spinning really fast on the wall. It's like a chamber that spins, and he goes insane. I wonder if that would be similar.
I mean, they sent people insane during the MK Ultra experiments using LSD, so
Yeah. Overdosing everybody with LSD.
without their knowledge too.
So DMT, that particular has gotten a lot of traction, I've noticed over the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's said that it's actually a naturally produced chemical in your brain,
Mm-hmm.
but only at very specific times in a person's life.
And it's such minuscule amounts as well that are being naturally released that you'll never trip from it.
Yeah. There is a hypothesis that when somebody passes away, your brain dumps a massive amount.
It's highly possible. I'll let you know when I die.
Yeah, that'd be good. I think they've just they've hypothesized it, and I believe they're trying to set up like some kind of scanning system for people when they go. I would assume it's something like, oh yeah, capital punishment. Since you're scheduled to be let go of this world on this date, we're going to hook up this machine to your brain and we're going to figure out if this is what happens. I know Rogan's talked about it. It's released from the pineal gland in your brain.
That's what it said.
When you're sleeping? Is it when you're sleeping?
I have heard that too. Yeah.
So one of the hypotheses is that it's released when you're sleeping, and that's what causes dreams.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of wild because
So
there's always
a-
been interesting things about dreams, and the people that are able to lucid dream like on command, to have that kind of control.
I used to be able to do
over
that when I was younger. 10, 11.
I think maybe
I would know when I'm dreaming.
four times ever in my life I've been able to take control of a lucid dream.
I had a wild dream recently that I was in a building made of TVs, and
Sounds like propaganda.
Sounds like the Sphere in Las Vegas. I mean, that's pretty much what that's made of. It's a bunch of
one-giant
TVs.
TV, yeah.
Interesting.
So there's I can't remember the name of the company in England. There's a place in England right now that's doing a study trying to map the DMT realm, where they're giving people like IV drips of DMT to try to keep them in there for like an hour plus at a time. And it's going to be interesting to see what they come back with. It's pretty interesting that most everybody that does DMT always comes back talking about the same exact things. They're seeing the same beings. They're seeing the same places, which leads me to question is, are we A, blasting off into some other dimension or universe where these beings really exist? Or B, are we blasting into an internal dimension in our brain and all these places and beings that people are seeing and meeting, if they're all just archetypes of our own subconscious, and that's why everybody sees the same things, because we all have the same subconscious archetypes. There's a lot of elves people see. The jester is another one. Almost like these lizard beings are one. Alien looking beings.
These are just all the inhabitants past the ice wall. That's all it is.
Maybe.
So yeah, the Imperial College of London, the study details. Participants were all healthy. 7 males and 4 females participated in the subjects. They were required to have prior experience with the psychedelic drug. Altered realms provoked by psychedelics, which could invoke exaggerated levels of stress. People enrolled. So, They were 30-minute long sessions. The study consisted of 30-minute long of DMT immersion with 4 dosing regimens. There was 6 milligram a minute, 10 milligram a minute, 14 milligram a minute, and 18 milligram a minute. Yeah, interesting stuff. Yeah, they're trying to map out this other dimension that people...
Oh, hopefully here soon I can go map it out. I've got some DMT sitting at home. I just need to get a device to vaporize it out of.
Where does it come from?
So DMT is found in almost like every living plant. It's just very trace amounts in some. Most people that extract DMT, they're usually either going to extract it from Acacia confucia root bark powder or Mimosa hostilis root bark powder. And what I have at home right now is a Mimosa hostilis extraction.
Is there any different, is it different anyway, or it's all...
So there seems to be a consensus online. I've actually never fully broken through on DMT, what they call the full breakthrough. I think part of it is because the way I've tried to smoke it, it's been very harsh out of just like a regular, I think they call it a bobble, the little meth pipe. So I plan on getting like a bobble bong so I can put water in it, nice, longer, smoother, bigger hit.
Can you just eat it?
You can, and I'll tell you how to do that in a minute. But smoking it, there seems to be a consensus online that the Acacia confucia root bark extraction also contains NMT, which is slightly psychoactive in its own way. And I've heard the hypothesis that the NMT and the DMT fight for the same receptors. And if the NMT floods the receptors first, it's a lot harder for you to actually break through on the DMT. So there's been a lot of people that have said the Mimosa hostilis root bark extraction they've had much better luck with. So this will be actually my first time doing the Mimosa hostilis extraction. So I'm eager to do that.
Where are those? So it's primarily those 2 plants.
Mm-hmm.
Where are they indigenous to?
So acacia is indigenous to quite a few areas, and there's a hypothesis that the burning bush story in the Bible was directly related to an experience on DMT, which would have been some form of like ayahuasca tea, which is a plant containing DMT mixed with a plant containing a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. And Syrian rue also grows in the same area as acacia does over there. And the Syrian rue seeds contain, I think, harmala or harmaline, which is a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. Now, when you asked if you can just eat DMT, I have done a form of modified ayahuasca. It was a very light experience, and I threw up before all the DMT kicked in. Were the 2 people I tripped with, it was very light for them. I think we just needed a higher dose of DMT. But you grind up the Syrian rue seeds, which contain the monoamine oxidase inhibitor. You can put them in pill capsules, swallow them, wait 30, 45 minutes, and then you swallow the capsule of powdered DMT. And it's supposed to be the exact same as ayahuasca.
So ayahuasca is actually native to America, right? It's South America, and it doesn't some of it grow in like some Mexico, a little bit in like New Mexico, Nevada.
I want to say there's some Mimosa hostilis through Mexico. Don't quote me on that, but I think there is.
So what would be the difference between ayahuasca and DMT? Are they essentially the same? Or
the thing in ayahuasca that makes you trip is the DMT, but what makes it active orally in your system is the plant containing the monoamine oxidase inhibitor. So DMT can't be broken down and digested in our system because of monoamine oxidase. So with the MAOI, that makes it so your body can actually digest it and break it down and actually give you the experience, which is why the modified form, eating the Syrian rue seeds, acts as the monoamine oxidase inhibitor.
Interesting.
I fully understand.
I don't know most of those words.
So that's definitely something I'd like to do again since I've only done it one time.
Oh, we should go get our own and then make it ourselves and then take it before the podcast and see what happens.
Yeah, kind of like it just sounds like the 70s when they were making bathtub acid. Yeah, sounds fantastic.
Yeah, you don't want the bathtub acid. Just I'm sure
What is
most
that?
most people watching and you guys have seen Breaking Bad. So in Breaking Bad, I think it was Heisenberg that said, the difference between 98% pure meth and 90% pure meth is astronomical. And it's the same with LSD. You don't want. So what he means by bathtub acid is people just making it at home in a dirty area with not like legit lab equipment.
So there's impurities in it.
Yeah, I feel like in my years I've had both very clean, pure LSD and some dirty LSD, and you'll have more negative effects with the dirty. Your body will feel heavier or more anxious. So the more pure that it is, the cleaner the experience, as with most things.
So I'm looking at some of the graphs from the study with DMT. It looks like when they stop the drip, since it's been a continuous, from what I've heard, if you take a standard dose of DMT, whatever you might consider that, might be saying it wrong, a trip typically lasts like 10, 15 minutes?
15, 20 tops.
Okay.
That's why they call it the businessman's trip. You can go smoke it on your lunch break and go back to work if you want.
So with this, after questioning the subjects, since they've had a continuous drip for 30 minutes, it's extending it another 30 minutes or longer. So it's showing people were stayed immersed for like 40 minutes longer. That was the most heightened one. Everything else started drastically dropping off, like entity encounters. After they stopped getting the drips, those encounters started dropping off pretty rapidly. Visual imagery, that sharply dropped off. But it seems very consistent from as soon as they started getting the dose, like you said, it's called what, blasting off?
They refer to it as blasting off.
Yeah. So it looks like it just starts immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And
Really?
then
Within seconds of.
It's fast. Like, so the smoking it, you want to try to do 3 big hits and hold them in as long as possible. You literally have like 60 seconds to 2 minutes to try to get these 3 hits in and hold them in. And after that, it's almost, if you didn't get enough, you're so heavy, it's almost hard to take anymore. Like, it comes on very fast, faster than the only thing I've smoked that comes on faster was salvia.
Salvia is fast. Yeah.
The other quickest thing ever for me was something I snorted, and within 10 minutes I was there. So yeah, it's very fast, very intense. A lot of people want to try it, and I know a case where a kid smoked it and he was like screaming, begging to be brought back, and he got exactly what he asked for. He blasted off, had either the outer or inner body experience, and I just don't think he was ready for what it was about to do. He had only done mushrooms and LSD prior, and I think he thought this was just going to be this
another walk in the park,
another
kind of thing.
Fun walk in the
he
park.
Wasn't prepared for what could happen. Yeah, we've all heard stories about that, of course, and I know you've mentioned before. Is it's like DMT especially really puts a lot of things into perspective for people because it kind of, it sounds like it splits your brain in half and has you looking at your own life from another perspective. So
if these beings that people are encountering are just archetypes of our own subconscious, and these beings communicate with people to give them knowledge or information or to give them words of wisdom or advice, then if that's the case, then you're literally only having conversations with your own subconscious in the experience. So it's like you're talking to other parts of yourself, if that's the case. If it's not the case and you're blasting out to a different dimension, then yes, you're really talking to these other entities who are also trying to give you advice about life.
So here's a little bit of a what if-ism, I guess. So we differentiate our consciousness and our subconsciousness, right?
Mhm.
Some people have the ability to have complex conversations with themselves while having two distinct perspectives on a situation or a scenario. So what if there is a divide in a person's brain where you are your conscious entity, but then there is that subconscious portion of you locked away that is in fact like another person. So when you do DMT, it gives that subconsciousness an opportunity to be like, hey, you're fucking this up for the both of us. Stop it. Kind of like it's another person just along for the ride. They have no say in what's going on. They're
So,
like just
severe
watching.
bipolar
Yeah. Yeah.
or split personality syndrome. Rather.
I would say split personality if it's like in its truest form, the other personalities do take over.
Like me,
This
myself,
is-
and Irene.
Yeah. This would be simply another soul just watching, like they're watching a movie, they're screaming at the movie screen saying, no, don't go through that door, you idiot, the murderer's in there. But they have no say on the outcome. They're literally just watching. So maybe tripping is a way for this deeper self or other perspective to finally come forward and be like, hey, so I got some ideas for you. Stop doing that shit.
So I feel like even if it's a separate part of your subconscious, it's still part of yourself. All the bits of our subconscious are still our self. So I'm sure you've heard the idea that we're all connected to one giant consciousness. So I guess
God.
I guess one way to look at it is that one consciousness itself is the consciousness, and each one of us living our individual lives would be part of the whole consciousness subconscious, if that makes sense. Like if each and every one of us...
No, that plays too much into your
if-
determinism.
If each one of us are just God experiencing itself through millions and millions of different forms, then I feel like each individual self being us would be a part of the subconscious of this conscious whole. And in doing such, it's almost as if God or consciousness is learning to experience itself through all of us. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
But we get to make choices and deal with the consequences of our actions. Whereas I believe a subconsciousness would never have to deal with such a thing, right?
What do you mean by that?
So your conscious being, if I decide to punch Jesse in the face and I consciously make that decision, there's a consequence to that.
Mm-hmm.
If my subconsciousness tells me to do it and then I do it, well, it's still just me suffering the consequence of that.
It's possible your conscious choice to punch him in the face came from a subconscious place.
Yeah.
Somewhere in your subconscious, something he did made you angry, though you're not sure why it made you angry. It's that bit of your subconscious that caused you to make that conscious decision.
But I'm the one dealing with the consequence. So the way you kind of put, maybe I see subconsciousness as like something different than what you do. But if we're all a piece of God experiencing this, I don't think that we would have a say in what's going on, where we would just be like...
We don't.
I believe we do.
We don't.
I believe we do. So
why?
I believe in free will. That's it. It's just I believe in free will. I don't believe in determinism. If again,
does God have
choose to
does
punch
God
Jesse
have
in the
a
face,
does
then-
God have a plan and a will? People always say God's will. God has a plan. If
Sure.
God has a will and God has a plan, then we can never ever make a decision against his will or his plan.
Well, as long as the end still happens, regardless of what happens in the middle.
Yeah, I don't think it's us going against his
'Cause you
plan,
can have
but
different paths leading to the same destination.
Yeah, that kind of goes with.
But what decides
multiverse
what
theory.
decides the exact path you're going to take to get there?
These
there
are
doesn't
very
need to be
deep
one.
philosophical questions that just can't really be answered.
This will be the debate for when Amjad can come on.
It would just be like
Sure,
you
but
have
if it's nothing but
three different routes you could take on
Yeah.
a walking trail. They're all going to be the same destination,
but if everything is nothing but
regardless of
like
which one you take.
pure hypothetical philosophy, then it's not really a debate. Then you're just conjecturing what could possibly be, and we don't know.
Yeah, because you can never prove or disprove it.
Yeah.
Would you say we live in a mathematically precise universe?
Yes.
I don't know. What do you mean by that?
A mathematically precise universe would pretty
One
much
that was
it would pretty much also prove
created.
determinism. Because a mathematically precise universe would say in any moment where you have to make a decision, there's absolutely no other decision you could have made than the decision you made because of this mathematical precision.
maybe on paper, but things on paper don't always come
Yeah.
to fruition.
And there's very strange things even we don't fully understand, like black holes. They seem to like break space-time and physics itself. So I believe there is
Exceptions to the rule.
I believe there are always
and
exceptions
almost
to the
everything
rule.
is
But
exceptions to the rule.
the
Rules don't really matter.
the fact that human beings were able to discover mathematics and prove that it is true in the sense that math is true. If you take 2 apples and 2 apples, you now have 4. That's a proven fact. Since humans were able to understand that is something in our reality, then in order for a star to be created, enough gases have to come together and neutrons and electrons have to collide and condense on itself to then spark.
Sounds like things would have to be mathematically precise for that to happen.
For that specific outcome, sure. But then there are a multitude of outcomes, like Jupiter. Jupiter could have been a sun if it was 5 times its size. It just never reached it.
Mm-hmm.
There's also dwarf stars that never truly had the opportunity. But then there's also pulsars and quasars, which are just anomalies beyond belief.
But it seems as if everything would have to be mathematically precise for all those things to form in the way they formed.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I don't think that matters.
Precise, yes. You have to be precise for specific outcomes, but if everything that we're told is true, the amount of chances that our galaxy alone has had to hit these equations, it was bound to happen. There's estimated to be nearly 400 billion stars in our Milky Way galaxy alone, and many of them have planets.
I've counted them.
So we're talking trillions and trillions squared amount of opportunities to then hit this equation. So it's kind of like, it's like a calculator just trying to find the right equation. And
Monkeys on a typewriter.
It's had billions of years to find the equation. And now we're here.
10,000 years.
And we're here
10,000? Oh, is that the consensus now? It's 10,000?
And we're here because things are
For anybody that
mathematically
knows what we're
precise for
Well,
us to be here.
I mean, for religious people, I was always
Yeah, like
right?
10, 15,000.
10, 15.
Yeah.
What was all
At the
what was
high end.
all the hoopla about 6,000 then? I remember that was a trope
Yeah,
when
maybe
people would
it's
talk
6 or
about,
8.
religious people are stupid. They believe the world's only 6,000 years old.
Yeah. Some think it's 6, some think it's 10. But yeah, there's no way it's more than 15.
I personally want to believe that we're actually inside of a black hole, a supermassive black hole. It'd be interesting.
would we ever be able to find out if we were or not?
No, it'd be impossible for humans to find out. We could never go fast enough to either reach the beginning, the Big Bang, or the edge. So,
What do you mean? There's plenty of proof around us. We live in Elmira. This place is a black hole.
I've always called it a toilet bowl.
It's a dumpster for sure, at least.
Yeah. Dumpster fire sometimes.
What were we talking about?
I do love this area, though, because it's so close to the Finger Lakes.
Yeah, it can be beautiful, but
If you have a car and you can drive 40 minutes, it's worth living here.
that diverged pretty quickly because you tried going on to the determinism.
It's because we live in a deterministic universe.
Certainly allowed to believe that. I believe I have free will.
You can believe what you want,
Can
but
there
there's
be
only
both?
one truth. No, the two couldn't exist together.
Well, like you said, no matter what, it comes to the same outcome.
Yeah.
So the ending could be determined, which, I mean, technically it is for the Earth. Eventually, the sun will swallow our planet
We all know
when
that.
it dies. It's mathematically proven.
We don't know that.
I mean, it's the
We
equation's
ain't gonna
been
be here
solved.
that long anyway.
Yeah, I believe human beings won't be here that long either. But they've worked out the math. In several billion years, the sun will run out of fuel and eat our planet because it grows supermassive.
So you're saying the end can't be determined, but the middle can be whatever we want?
I'm saying it's all determined. Every choice we make,
But why couldn't there be both?
the two I don't think could exist together.
If the end is determined, and then
yeah,
we can
if
do-
the ending is
we can-
determined, no
yeah,
matter
if
what
the-
we
if
do,
the end of the story
matters
is
to
written,
it, but
we can make the middle of the story whatever.
So
we
I
want.
can't remember who said this, but basically if you took the universe as it is now and rewound it all the way back to the moment of the Big Bang, everything would unfold exactly the same way as it did before.
But that's just conjecture from
you would
somebody.
make all the same decisions you did, and we would all be sitting here right now having the same conversation.
I mean-
yeah, you would just be rewinding time, and it's like rewinding
Well,
a
you
movie.
can't do
Nothing
that, though.
happens.
Right, it's
Nothing
just a
changes that
hypothetical,
way.
but if you were able to wind it
Yeah.
all back, everything would play out the exact same way.
Yeah.
There's no way to ever tell if that's a thing or not.
Theoretical, that's really it.
Yeah.
But then there's also multiverse theory, where I think then that would play in determinism, but no, that would be both, because you have if there's an infinite multitude of multi-universes where
Then there's a universe where there's free will.
or it's all like in the grand scheme, it's all free will, because I am making a different decision in each universe. Therefore, it is.
Well, that could be the decision that you would always choose in that specific universe, but then there would be a universe where there is actual randomness.
That's one of the things about the multiverse theory, is that it is always.
But if there was actual randomness, people.
Oh, that was weird. No, something on the back of my phone. It looked like there was a button or something.
But people would be like exploding or something. I don't know if there was true randomness.
Yes. I mean, in multiverse theory, there may be a scenario where you make the same decision twice, 3, 4 times, but never always the same exact decision. So no matter what, there's always a different, but if everything comes to the same outcome, I don't think it would matter.
So one of the main reasons I believe in determinism is from a very deep LSD trip that I had back in 2014, where what I saw in my head in this meditation was that our soul or our consciousness is inhibiting the body of these characters to specifically be the conscious observer of this character, because the life lessons this character will learn throughout their life are lessons that our soul or our consciousness needs to grow and evolve itself. And we inhibit these characters, and we're just kind of along for the ride as the conscious observers of what these characters are doing. Ties into the idea that like this whole thing is just a play. That's why I kind of understand what Kanye means when he says we're all unpaid actors. We're all just in this play of life along for the ride to observe the lives of these characters.
I could see why you would feel strongly about determinism then. As determinism?
I never knew what determinism was until like 2-3 years ago. Amjad came by talking about it. And when he came by talking about it, that's when that specific experience came flooding back into my head. And I'm like, okay, so that's the exact term or word for what I experienced on that experience.
Mm-hmm.
And even if determinism is real, it doesn't matter anyway, because we can still do whatever we want.
Yeah.
And if it's going to end up the same way,
I mean,
there's
for all human beings, it does
point
end the
worrying
same way
about
for all of
it
us.
one way
We
or
all
another.
end up dead. So I don't know. I definitely accept that determinism is a possibility, but I choose to believe that there is free will because when I make a decision,
the idea
it
of
feels like it
determinism is
my
terrifying.
decision.
I don't think so. I think it's really one and the same. Because even if determinism is real, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah,
because it's not like
it wouldn't matter if things were predetermined. You'd still just live
That's why
your
part of
life.
me wonders if Jesus was so able to love and forgive people, because if he knew our lives were already determined, it's like the idea, forgive them not, for they know not that they sin. The idea of being able to love and accept everybody for who they are and what they do and forgive them, because in a sense, even though it's their character's fault for the thing they did, it's still in a sense not their fault. Which is why the idea of determinism could also be dangerous. And I feel like if people caught on to the idea that determinism was a thing, they would want to stop taking responsibility for all of their actions. And even though I believe in determinism, I'm still in this character that we call Adam. And since I'm inhibiting this character, I take responsibility for all past, present, and future things that this character does, even if I have no choice over what this character does.
I mean, that's just how the world works. So you'd have to, whether you wanted to or not. Whether
I think some people though,
free will.
I think some people though would try to use the idea of determinism as, oh, I don't have to be responsible for anything I do, so I can just do whatever I want. Although if they were to make that decision in and of itself would be determined to happen. But it was a debate I was having with somebody online about determinism, and he was like, well, we can't believe that because then nobody would take responsibility for their actions. Well, I believe in determinism, and I still take responsibility for all my actions.
Yeah. But it would just take one crazy, charismatic person to introduce a new philosophy into Western society, or all of human society. So, it's interesting. I do wonder what. So I believe this is more of a Western value, is free will. I do wonder what the Muslim take on free will is. Do they believe in free will, or is everything planned out through Allah and Muhammad?
Let me Google it.
That would be really interesting. And I mean, we know China doesn't really believe in free will. It's kind of a given. Neither does North Korea.
Well, yeah, the very thought of communism.
Communism.
Yeah, so it looks like Muslims do believe in free will.
Interesting. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would assume anybody that's monotheistic would believe that.
I've also always wondered about the evolution of consciousness or the soul.
Yeah,
And this
how did it
actually
come to be?
This actually came from a salvia experience I had back in 2012 that absolutely terrified me, and I feel like it took me 10 years to even start to make sense of it. But I started off as this tiny little speck, like a single-celled organism, and it was like I was in this book. We'll just call it the Book of Life. And the pages of this book just kept turning very fast. And every time a new page would open up, it's like I was born, and as the page would close, I would die. And I started off as this single-celled thing, and then I was like 2 cells, 4, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I lived all these different lives of little insects, animals, other beings. And then finally, as the last page was opening up, it's like I watched myself be born again and watched my whole life in the flash of an eye up to the point where I smoked the salvia, and then the page like stopped halfway. So I don't know if that was the journey that my soul has taken or my consciousness has taken, or if that's how consciousness itself has evolved. I just know it was terrifying to die 1,000 times in 5 minutes, probably even more than 1,000. Like the pages were turning fast too. Like it was just almost like somebody was like flipping one of those picture books where you flip the pages and the something's going.
Play real fast. That kind of sounds like reincarnation, where maybe like you brought up, our souls need to learn lessons. Maybe your soul hasn't learned all of its lessons yet. I know my last salvia experience, of course, it stuck with me, and I do believe that it really actually changed me from what I experienced. It is kind of hard to describe, but it felt like me and everyone around me, we just started morphing. It was very strange. We were people, and then we started morphing into like notches that just kind of fit together. Like we were all just in a row, and then my piece fell out of place, and it was very, very weird. It's kind of like laying boards up against a wall, and then one of the boards falls out of place, and now everything's screwed up because because nothing's in order anymore. And that was absolutely terrifying, because it felt like, is this the end? Am I going to die? And then it went to like all these other separate things. Every other person that was in line with me were like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You need to get back. You're going to ruin everything. And subconsciously, it just feels like that was the moment where I not chose, but like was forced out of a group of people just walking in line or doing what was told for them to do. Like,
you became not a sheep?
I guess. Because at that point in my life, I was doing what everybody else was doing. I was listening to the same music, going to the same movies, hanging out with the same people. And then when that happened, it really felt like I got completely disassociated from all of that, where I felt like I found my individuality, where I wasn't just following lead anymore. That was terrifying.
See,
that was like the last time. And since that point, weed's never been the same for me. Like getting high just has never been what it used to be.
See, I've always said there's something to salvia. It's just so fast, chaotic, and scary that it's hard to integrate the experience and make sense of it. And I feel like your brain gets quite wacky on it as well. This is one of the interesting things about DMT. When you smoke DMT, your state of mind is almost completely sober. It's like you're experiencing this wild experience while your mind is in a sober state to still fully be able to comprehend it. The only downfall to DMT is it's like, and I've talked to many people about this, when you come back from the experience, it's like coming out of a dream or like getting hit with that Men in Black flashy thing. It's like, all right, you're coming back to 3D now, and poof, it's like, we'll say for a moment that like the ideas that come from a psychedelic experience, especially something like DMT, imagine these ideas are like 4th or 5th dimensional ideas, and you can't bring a 4th or 5th dimensional object into a 3-dimensional world. And I think that's also part of the reason why it's very hard to articulate the psychedelic experience sometimes. This is also too why, like, unless you've actually experienced it, no matter how much somebody tells you about it, how much you read about it, you'll never fully understand until you do it. It's like
Trying to describe a banana to somebody that's never seen a banana.
Try to describe red to a blind person.
Yeah.
It's about the same thing as trying to describe a psychedelic experience to somebody who's never tripped. The best thing I do is just try to describe ideas and philosophies maybe that have come to me through these experiences, but describing how I came to those conclusions can be quite difficult. Like, especially when I get talking about like visions in my head. Like the first time I ever had a vision in my head was in 2012. We took a dangerous combination. We probably could have died from it, but we were young and stupid, and I definitely don't condone what we did. We mixed 2 hits of 25C N-Bohm, which were 500 micrograms each, with 2 hits of 25I N-Bohm, which were 700 micrograms each. The N-Bohms can have some pretty nasty, dangerous body effects that I've experienced. I'll get into that later, but during this experience, I was like completely out of body. Erica was out of body with me. Her and I were communicating up in the spirit world, even though our bodies were in different rooms down here on Earth. And her and I both saw this same vision, just slightly different. The girl I was dating at the time, she didn't trip with us because she was pregnant with my child. And we had just found out like a month and a half prior that she was pregnant. And in this experience, I was looking up at the sun. And the sun in this moment was representing the soul of my unborn child. And all of a sudden, I watched this sun fade out and go black and disappear. And after the experience, I came out of it. I asked my girlfriend at the time, I said, "Where's the baby?" She looked confused as all hell. She's like, "It's in my stomach. Why?" And I didn't say much after that. I was just like, okay. And like I was trying to make sense of it all. A week later, we went for the first ultrasound and the baby didn't have a heartbeat. So I find it very interesting that being out of body, I had this vision and saw my unborn child, the soul of it represented as the sun, disappear. And then a week later, the baby didn't have a heartbeat. I've always been curious as to how I was able to see that and interpret what it was. And then a week later, the thing that I saw and interpreted as such actually happened. Like I found out, well, that's what I was seeing in that moment. To me, there was nothing else I could have been seeing in that moment except that. And I've always been interested how I was able to see that. Erica and I also on that same night, strangely enough, her and I didn't do anything physical here in the physical world, but somehow we had sex together up in the spirit world. She was dating somebody else. I was dating somebody else. We weren't together. Her and I both saw her and I getting together and actually traveling the country in a red car. And this was in 2012. Cut to 2015. Her and I are a couple and we're traveling the country in my red Hyundai. So it's very interesting how we were able to almost see through time or have these premonitions where we saw through time. There was also another one, my first ever time doing mescaline. I've only ever done mescaline once. And I'm thinking it's something with phenethylamines that help you almost see through the veil of time because both the N-Bohms and mescaline are phenethylamines. So on mescaline, I was at the apartment. Erica was with her boyfriend. I was in the bathroom. I came out of the bathroom. And I won't use actual names. We'll just call her A. That was the girl I was dating at the time who I just broke up with like a month or two before doing the mescaline. She was also the one that was pregnant with my child. And I come out, I look at them, I said, "So A left." And they were like, "Yeah, she left." I was like, "But she's going to come back." And they were like, "Okay." I was like, "But then she's going to leave again." And they were like, "Okay." I was like, "But then she'll be back." And again, they were confused. They're like, "Okay." I was like, "But then she's going to leave and she won't be back." And over the next year, that's exactly how it went. And I didn't do anything to try to initiate getting back with her. She just came back on her own accord and we started talking again. So again, I'm very interested to know how I was able to, and this, I wasn't even tripping hard enough to actually have a vision in my head. It's like I just got this download of that's how the future was going to go. And I understood, okay, this is how it's going to happen. So I'm still very interested to know the science of how that's possible.
Coincidence, maybe?
I don't.
I mean, realistically, what % chance of that?
Of something like
Could,
that?
yeah, 10,
Being
15,
that accurate,
20%?
who knows?
I don't,
But
yeah, I don't think it'd be that.
with all
So
of
how
that,
could it be coincidence though that I saw the sun fade out and go black, and that sun was my unborn child's soul, and then a week later, the baby didn't have a heartbeat.
The percent of how old?
She couldn't have been more than 2 or 3 months. So I get there's a high possibility of it, but for me to actually see that thing, and then it happened. There was a third time this happened at Grassroots while I was pretty deep on an LSD trip. We were sitting out in front of our tent, and I was in an anti-gravity chair. And I popped up, I looked at Erica, I said, in a couple minutes, there's going to be 3 people that come walking out of the woods, a girl and 2 guys, and one of the guys is going to have a hat on backwards. And she just looks at me and goes, oh, okay. And I lay back, and sometime within the next 5 minutes, I start to hear some ruffling in the bushes, and out walks these 3 people, 1 guy, or 1 girl, 2 guys, 1 guy with his hat on backwards, and they walk right past us. And I looked at Erica, and I'm like, confused again, because I'm like, did I feel that energy coming? Did I see through some sort of deterministic thing where, okay, this is going to happen, and I saw that it was going to happen, and then it happened? That's one of the weird things about psychedelics is when you experience things like that, it's very hard to explain how or why it happened.
for sure.
How many people had their hats on backwards that day?
But for 3 people, a girl and 2 guys, exactly how I said it, and then they came walking by just like that, and I told her they'd come walking out of the woods right past us. And within 5...
I still think it's coincidence.
And
'Cause
within
how many groups of
So-
3 people with 1 guy and 2?
So with all of this, all we could ever do is conjecture. Like
Mhm.
there's no true way to determine. We could come up with theories, but with everything that you've talked about, I absolutely understand why you believe in determinism, because
Mhm.
you absolutely want all humans want explanations for things. That's why we're so
Mhm.
driven to understand stuff. So determinism, you have decided that determinism is the best and most logical reasoning to explain why you've experienced these things, why you are able to see what you see. Now, the only one I could speak to as where it might be kind of iffy is with the sun going dark.
Mhm.
With a scenario like that, no matter what kind of scenario, if there was a negative outcome of any kind of scenario, you could have attributed that to
yeah.
That's kind of like seeing the equation and then figuring out the problem afterwards. It's like, okay, so this is a 4. That means it's either 2 + 2 or 3 + 1 or this or that or this or that. No matter what, you saw an outcome and then you're trying to fit something into that. As for my own experience, I have had what I would call premonitional dreams.
Mhm.
I'll have a weird dream.
I think most people can attest to that.
I'll have a weird dream. It has nothing to do with anything, but it'll be like I'm at work and a certain pizza I pull out of the oven along with another item, and then this certain customer comes through the door. 5 or 6 months later, that scenario happens, but it has never been the same. There has always been 1, 2 small details that are different, where it's either the customer's name is different or the pizza wasn't the same. Now, maybe I'm misremembering because it is hard to fully remember a dream to its fullest account, but I cannot remember a single time where my premonitional dream has been 100% accurate. But this happens every 4 or 5 months, and then I'll be doing something, and then, oh, the deja vu. That's right. I had a dream about this months ago, which has led me to believe maybe there's some kind of determined outcome, but because the dream has never been 100% correct, it also leads me to believe that there is free will, or in a multiverse theory where maybe I'm seeing a universe where a scenario is so similar, but just one little detail off.
I think it's just all by chance.
See, I don't believe in coincidence, so it's hard for me to think that it's just coincidence that I saw these things and then these things played out exactly how I saw it.
For sure.
I believe coincidence is just an illusion. Especially,
I don't think I fully understand coincidence.
So my thing too is if
I get it.
If people say that everything happens for a reason, how could there be coincidences if there's a reason for everything?
Well, I don't. Things happening for a reason, that's just cause and effect. I don't know where that comes from. I don't know why people say that.
See, I think coincidence is just an illusion.
This isn't helpful.
Because
a coincidence, the fact of being coincident. Bro, you can't use the word in the definition. Who wrote this?
This is 2024. You can absolutely use the word in the definition nowadays.
You don't even need to define
From the Century Dictionary. You're awful. You're awful. You cannot use the word as the definition.
I think
Merriam-Webster does the same thing.
I think
the
you just
act
have
or
to-
condition of coinciding. You son of a bitch.
things happen. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
Then
of
look up
course I've always
coincide-
heard
look
the
up
word.
coinciding.
But
And then
I
it'll
don't
be
think
like,
I
look up
fully
coincidence.
understand the concept of a coincidence. The occurrence of events that happen at the same time by accident but seem to have some connection.
Yeah, that puts it pretty good.
That sounds like the human condition, because we want to find meaning and understanding in everything. So if we see two things that are so similar, we want to connect the dots. That's just what we do.
Yeah, I guess
We
you
can't
have to
separate it.
for scenarios like that. You kind of have to break it down into what chance of that. What's the chance of that happening?
None
And
of us are mathematicians. Like 0.00314% chance of this happening.
No, you just kind of you could rough estimate it, like what's the
Maybe you can. I certainly can.
because I'm sure everybody has had a 1 in a million thing happen to them.
For sure.
Like I've definitely had that, and you would think that couldn't possibly ever happen, but things like that happen all the time. You always get that 1 in. Especially
True.
for me,
True.
we had a 1 in, I forgot the number. We flipped a coin, essentially. We rolled a die, and it was a 4 or higher 54 times in a row, which is like a 1 in a couple trillion chance of happening.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is the same thing as flipping a coin and getting heads 54 times in a row, which shouldn't happen.
Interesting. And
And when
I
you
don't
look at
know
it
if I
that
believe in
way,
coincidence.
something that close happening seems uncomparative.
Well, I've brought this up before as well. If you do something enough times, eventually you will get the outcome you're searching for. So if you have 1 million people on the planet all at once flipping a quarter 100 times, one person will flip heads every single time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a chance.
So
that it
eventually,
couldn't happen, but-
if an experiment is done enough times, if a random experiment is tried enough times, a result will happen.
well, yeah, if you take 1 million sample sizes, this was one.
Now think about our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy. Trillions and trillions of experiments, and here we are.
We're the only ones here.
Yeah.
There's no-
Well,
there's no-
there's dogs and there's lions.
Well,
and
I meant there's no life.
we're
on
the
Earth.
only conscious
beings in the entire universe.
I don't know.
don't
Smoke some
know.
DMT. That might change your mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just said
No,
you
I
can't do it yourself.
understand. I understand.
It's-
Like
that's one of the
religious
possibilities.
I understand religion's concept of this, but does it actually say in the Bible that human beings are the only ones? Because God did make angels.
I don't
right?
think it specifically says. But
From what I remember, we are his favorite, right?
Mm.
So he made dogs, he made cats, he made elephants, he
How
made
are
angels.
dogs not God's favorite?
Right.
They're
But
so much
he
better
made
than most
us,
humans.
he made all of these creatures on this planet, and even semi-omnipotent beings, angels. We may be his favorite, but who's to say that on another planet he didn't make another creature with consciousness and sentience?
One could
It's
argue
possible.
that God didn't make dogs. It could be argued that he did because he created us and we created dogs through selective breeding.
I think dogs are just the perfect embodiment of God, and God is the bestest boy. That's all. God is the bestest boy.
yeah, take it backwards. Dog spelled backwards.
Oh yeah. Ah. But I would actually like to talk to somebody a theologian who has like read through extensively. I don't think anywhere
Yeah, I don't think it says one way or the other.
that we were the only ones. He just says that we're his favorite.
But if you just think about it, it don't make any sense.
That there might be other conscious sentient beings.
In a way.
Maybe he had other projects, you know?
It was possible.
I mean, he could be working on one right now. You never know. But I would think.
Is he done resting?
I don't know.
Because on the seventh day he rested, and then it doesn't say anything that he did after that. So if he's still resting, he's not creating anything else.
Who knows? But that is something I've always wondered. It never specifically says. It just says we were his chosen favorite. But even the Bible says he has made other. Angels are sentient, right? Are they described as conscious sentient beings?
Well, yeah, because one of them made the choice to disobey him. And is now Satan.
Yeah. So there's absolutely a possibility that he's created other species out here. I don't know. It's all... It sucks, because we're never going to have, like, the answers, which is all humans want. Humans want the answers to everything.
We are very curious.
And greedy. We just want the knowledge. We got to know. We have to know. Once we know everything, we'll be satisfied, but then we won't. We won't be satisfied. So it's very strange that we're cursed with that.
Maybe all we got to do is soak our entire body in an entire vat of DMT.
I don't know if it would soak in through your body transdermally.
With enough time, it might.
Just do a thumbprint of LSD.
What's that?
Thumbprint?
So back in the day, a thumbprint was an initiation into like the dead family or basically what you would do. And there was like certain communes and stuff too that would do it as an initiation. You lick your thumb. And
can it absorb through the skin?
There's powdered LSD on the table. LSD is the threshold dose is like 50 micrograms to notice any psychedelic effects. That is a tiny, minuscule amount of powder. And you take your thumb, you lick it, and like you're getting your thumbprints at the police station, you roll your thumb in the powder and then lick it off. And we'll see you in 3 days.
See, something like that, I could imagine a lot of people had a really bad time because even myself, like I don't have a lot of experience with psychedelics at all. So maybe it'd be different for people who were in that type of group setting or in those groups and they kind of understand it. But just hearing that, or like if it were me in front of a person, he says, this is what you have to do, I would be absolutely terrified while doing it. And that alone will make it a bad time. Like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm actually doing this. I'm actually doing this. And we're now in hell for 3 days. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but you could be in heaven for 3 days too.
That's how long it would last, taking that much?
Taking that much, it's highly possible. I've read a couple trip reports of people that did thumbprints back in the day, and it was like 36 plus hours they were gone, like out of their body in a different reality.
Yeah, no. I would assume that your current state of mind has something to do with what you might experience.
Your current state of mind definitely has something to do with what you're going to experience, and this is why.
So if I'm riddled with fear and anxiety, that's not going to be a good
Can
time.
you sleep while you're on LSD?
Most people no, it's going to stimulate your mind enough. Even if you laid down and tried, you wouldn't.
So it's hard to, but you can.
It's possible you can.
Seems
but
like a waste.
what you're talking about, your mental state. So set and setting are very important when it comes to a psychedelic experience, and not just external set and setting, but internal set and setting as well. I'm not saying you can't have a good time going to a party where everyone's drinking and doing a hit of LSD, but it's highly possible you'll get very uncomfortable, very anxious, and start to have a bad time. That's one of those external set and settings. The internal set and setting is what kind of mood are you in that day? Are you going through something in life? Now, the way that I trip could be dangerous for a lot of people, because when I'm going through shit in life that I'm having trouble moving past or working out, I'll take 2 hits of LSD and then just sit on it for the night. And usually after the experience, I feel much better. I use it as a form of like my own psychotherapy. However, that could be dangerous for a lot of people. If they went into an experience with a lot on their mind, they could end up having a really, really bad time if they're not willing or able to face what's bothering them or to try to work through it.
So that's what you do most of the time now, is when you're having an off day and you use it as kind of like a therapy session?
So when I say I'm going through something, it's like it's been like
a long
weeks or months where I'm like, man, I'm just in a funk and I can't
Okay.
seem to figure out how to get myself out of this funk.
So when was the last time you took it when you weren't in a funk?
The last 2 times I took it.
Okay.
On Erica's
I
birthday.
was wondering if maybe if you had done it while you were in a funk, like maybe the last 7 or 8 times, maybe that's having an impact on you.
Even though I take it when I'm in a funk to work through it, my best experiences are definitely when I'm not in a funk, when I can clear my mind and almost be clear of all thoughts and just let my mind float and travel. Like the last trip last Tuesday and Erica's birthday back in January. It's interesting where your mind can go when it's clear. Like one of the things I got stuck on in my mind on this last trip, because I feel like I was in a place where I was seeing how 2 polar opposites almost connect. Selfishness and selflessness come from the same place. When you do something selfless, you're actually doing it for selfish reasons. And let me explain that. When you do something selfless to make somebody else feel good or to help somebody else feel good, you feel good about doing it, right? Mm-hmm. If you didn't feel good about doing it, you wouldn't do that selfless act. So this is in a sense where doing something selfishly can actually be a good thing because it makes you feel good when you do something selfless. So you begin to do more selfless acts to get that good feeling because it feels good to help other people. And Alan Watts talks about this, and I never really fully understood it until this last trip.
So I have to interject for that. I agree to an extent, but it has to be the type of act. So if I'm doing humanitarian aid or I'm dropping off shirts to a homeless shelter or something, yes, that would be a selfless act. Mm-hmm. But let's say there's an emergency and there's a house on fire and I hear a child screaming. Mm-hmm. I am doing a selfless act. I am putting myself in harm's way to run into that building and grab a child. I'm not doing it so that I can, I'm sure there might be some people that are like, oh, if I save this kid, I'm going to be a hero. But most people would be like, this child is going to die. If you have the balls to run into that building, this child's going to die. I want to save them. I don't want to, Mm-hmm. So I do believe, yes, there are certainly people who do selfless acts for selfish means, but it has to do with like the scenario. I would say if it's
so why'd you run in to save the kid?
Save their life, because the child deserves a life.
Because you don't want that child to die, right?
I'm sure that child doesn't want to die either.
But you ran in a selfless manner to save the child because you didn't want him to die.
You're putting extra steps.
Not extra steps.
It is.
Nope.
It's all of society.
It's still a
children deserve a chance at life, and yes, I want the child to live, but that's not because I'm consciously making the decision for it.
That doesn't benefit you in any way.
Something in my brain says someone is in trouble. I must help. That I don't think my subconsciousness is tricking me to do something selfishly, unless maybe you're using selfishness very loosely.
So let me explain it like this. Selfishness and selflessness, what's the one thing they have in common?
Self.
So again, they're still coming from the same place. If you didn't care about life, you wouldn't, or if it didn't make you feel good to save a life, you wouldn't put your life in danger to go save the other life.
Sure, I might feel happy that I save a child's life. So the way I perceive selfishness or being selfish is doing something consciously for self-gratification. Are you using it more loosely as like literal, as the literal word selfishness, like just because yourself is involved that you're perceiving?
Well, selfishness is you gain something from an action. You don't gain anything from that.
You wouldn't gain anything from saving a life? You wouldn't feel really good about yourself?
I would perceive selfishness as,
I know I'd feel pretty good about myself if I saved a child's life.
Yeah, of course you're going to feel good after, you find out whether or not. But so the way I would perceive selfishness, maybe you think the same way, Jesse, because it sounds like you might, is that you are consciously making a decision to do something because there is a favorable outcome for yourself. Do you see selfishness as that, or is it more...
So even with that definition, running into a burning house to save a child would have some self-gratification.
But I'm not consciously making the decision to run into the building because I know later I'm going to get gratification out of it. I'm doing it because I am scared that this child will die, and for some reason the compassion inside of me wants that person to have a chance. That's actually really hard to determine because in a situation like that, you don't know why you're doing it. Your body either tells you to go in,
sometimes
or don't.
you just automatically do it.
Yeah, you don't even have time to make a choice. You just either you do it or you don't.
A split second decision.
Because even selfishness and selflessness both come from a place of love. One self-love, one love for others.
Sure.
And that's how doing...
And they kind of intertwine.
That's how doing selfless acts can actually help bring more self-love, because you can feel good about yourself from doing these selfless acts.
So I think it's just the way we perceive selfishness.
In the Bible, it teaches to, do works for others. And I feel like I was connecting this on my last trip, that's in a sense what it's talking about, like be selfish with doing selfless things. Like if you want to feel good about yourself in a positive way, and a positive way of being selfish for yourself is to do more selfless acts.
Yeah, for sure. Because
that's
only
always,
are you helping the community, you're helping your own mental health, plus you're giving a good example to a community.
It's always going to bring us more gratification.
For sure.
Well, I guess it depends on whether or not you're religious or not, because sometimes you do good things because it pleases God, regardless of how it makes you feel.
If you consciously make the decision to save a life because it will earn you favor with God.
No,
selfish.
Not favor with God.
Well, I'm saying in that scenario, I am saying if you decide to do an action because you believe it will gain you favor with God, you are doing it for the wrong reason, and I think that God would actually
Well,
look
no,
down
not
on
because
that.
it's not because you're trying to get brownie points. It's because it's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. But if you consciously, in that split second, if you say, oh, if I do this, this is going to get me brownie points, then
Well, yeah,
that's bad.
That's not
Yeah.
good. That's looking for good karma.
Yeah. But if
you
you're
do it because it's what you're supposed to do,
if
regardless
you're,
of whether or not you want to do it or not. And
so you're saying the way you're raised with religious morals, you then do a
And
thing
did-
simply because you were raised that way and you
Yeah.
perceive that as being the right thing to do. For sure. Which is kind of what Western society is built on, you know. I'm sure if we were Mongolian raiders, then we would be pillaging villages right now. And that's
So where do
just what
morals-
we would perceive?
Where do morals come from?
Society.
that's a hotly debated topic.
Society. If America was a Muslim country, we would have Muslim values. That's what it is. Personally, that's what I believe.
It's not a bad argument.
Yeah, there are some really good YouTube videos that kind of go over what morality is and where
Yeah.
it comes from.
I do believe there are some truths to morality, like,
And I only asked that question because before psychedelics, I was a very immoral person. I used to do a lot of shady things and terrible things to people. And after
saying 20s were rough.
after I began doing psychedelics, it's having that realization that like we are all connected to something bigger, and that these people I hurt, in a sense, they are me. So why would I want to cause that pain to myself in these other people? That's another idea I got caught up on the last trip was self. What is self? What is the self? Is it similar to like the Hindus believe that there is only one self and it's the Atman or the soul of the world, that we're all just a piece of that? And if that's the case, then why would you ever want to harm anybody? Because harming somebody else is harming yourself.
Human brains are broken, and some of us just want violence.
And this is something too, when I've had people say to me like, oh, when you do psychedelics, you're interacting with demons or evil entities. And I'm like, okay, but then why would these demons or evil entities want me to be a better moral person? That doesn't make sense.
They're convincing you of determinism. That's why.
I just don't understand why an evil entity would want to convince somebody to do good things. That doesn't make sense to me. That's always my argument for, oh, you're interacting with demons, and it's like,
It sounds like they
Yeah, I
are
understand that way.
scared of the unknown. That's all. They're scared of the unknown.
psychedelics
People always
also
attribute some kind of spiritual or otherworldly entity to things that they just don't understand. It's
like
just-
another thing with psychedelics, when you can see God in your cat, you can begin to see God in everyone and everything. I explained that to the Mormons one time when they came over. I was like, the reason I like to hang out in nature a lot is because I experience God through watching the bugs fly around, listening to the birds chirping, the wind blowing through the trees, the sound of the waterfall crashing and the water flowing on. Like, to me, that is all God. And when I'm out in nature, I'm actually experiencing all that and seeing God in everything. But that's the evil demons trying to trick me through the use of the psychedelics.
Don't attribute things like that to all peoples that don't understand. But
I usually just kind of brush it off and laugh at it when people tell me that.
yeah,
Like, I don't consider myself a Christian, but I tried, after doing psychedelics, I began trying my best. And I say my best because I'm human. I'm obviously flawed. I'm not perfect. I'm always going to make mistakes. But I've tried my best to walk a similar path to Jesus Christ and treat people in a way that I feel like Jesus would want us to treat people and the way he would treat people. And again, I'm not always perfect, but that's my other argument is, why would an evil entity want me to try my best to walk a Christ-like path?
probably wouldn't.
Well, yeah, it wouldn't.
Yeah.
Which is why I don't believe what I'm encountering on my psychedelic experiences are evil entities or anything evil. Now, I'm not saying people can't experience evil things or possibly more darker evil entities on psychedelics. And I only say this because some of the sacrifice rituals that like the Aztecs used to do, they would eat mushrooms and then sacrifice these people. Like they were sacrificing these people to some god that they met on the mushrooms. And to me, that seems pretty evil.
Yeah.
Well,
Plus,
back then, they didn't really understand how the world worked. And they were trying to...
Mainly astronomy. They didn't understand why there were eclipses or blood moons or harvest moons.
Or droughts.
They just knew that during certain seasons and things like that, things would change colors or stuff like that. It was very strange. Also, like wildfires. So you think about... we see it now. California has massive wildfires, right? Almost every year. And a lot of that draft and that smoke ends up traveling south. So if you're in South America, you're an Aztec tribe, you've literally never left your tribe. Your entire world is this place, a few square kilometers. All of a sudden you see black soot flying through the sky and there's a blood moon. You want to know what it is, but you can't, so you come up with a reason.
There's some crazy shit happening, so let's just kill a bunch of people and let their blood flow, and that should appease the gods.
Yeah. There's a blood moon. Oh, that must mean the god wants blood because it's the color of blood. He wants blood. So let's literally sacrifice 1.5 million people and have so much blood in the streets that people are wading through it. Yeah. Cutting out hearts, decapitating babies, the whole nine. Yeah. But then the evil colonialist Spanish came. Oh no, here comes the far right. I love that meme with the Aztecs. That embodies the whole thing perfectly.
I mean, to the Aztecs, they would have been far right, because if you look on the map, they're coming from
they were
east, which is right.
They were heavy authoritarian, for sure. But I think they actually had a socialist society, because they gave out. Well, I mean, Rome was kind of socialist as well. They had wheat rations and things like that, but.
I feel like we could know more about the Mayan civilization if we didn't come over and burn all their literature.
They had books.
A lot of their history and literature was burnt up when the conquistadors came over.
Huh? What?
I'm pretty sure they had some written history.
Interesting. I've never heard. That's interesting.
Yeah, why would they do that? It's
Like
counterintuitive.
Göbekli Tepe is South America too, isn't it? What's counterintuitive? Burning literature?
Yeah, why wouldn't they just take it? Unless they really
Because
didn't want to know things back then. Like knowledge, they didn't really care about knowledge.
Or if they came over trying to spread a religion, if there was anything that contradicted that religion, they would have wanted to wipe out that information.
Especially with fanaticism, it's you land
maybe
on a
they just
foreign
didn't care at all.
shore.
Yeah.
Jesus is great,
see.
but there's been a lot of bad things done in the name of Jesus.
Oh, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I've said it so many times before. Whenever humans get involved in something, it eventually gets corrupted until it corrects itself.
Mm-hmm.
But I could absolutely see if you're a Spanish conquistador, you were raised in Spain, you know your society and what you see and what you experience. You jump on a boat and you go halfway around the world and you see nothing that you recognize. Sure, you might be like, these are savage heretics and anything that they have written down is nothing but heresy, so let's burn it all. I'm sure there was probably a few people who were like, shouldn't we keep this? But then they probably looked at it and was like, this is not a legible language. We will never learn this. Burn it all. The Library of Alexandria was burned. The Babylon Tower. There's so many historical references to just great swaths of literature being burned. And it's because it's not that you don't want to know the knowledge, is that you don't want others to have
You
the
want to
knowledge.
control
You want
a
to
certain
control
kind
the
of
knowledge.
narrative or control what people learn through history.
I mean, for all we know, we're only 30 years old. Everything we learned as a child could be absolutely fake.
Well, most of it is.
Yeah. But I'm saying, like, 200 years ago, there could have been literal dinosaurs walking on the planet. We wouldn't know the truth. We weren't here.
I heard an interesting hypothesis that all dinosaur bones were just dragons. And it's interesting, but man, those would have been some big fucking dragons.
So one of the theories with dragons is the only way they would have been able to fly because they were such large creatures is if they had bone structure like birds. And the problem with birds is their bones don't fossilize because they're hollowed bones.
Mm-hmm.
But that also gives a lot of people reasons to say, aha, see, dragons were probably real, because not only are dragons depicted in every single historical aspect around the world, no matter where you travel, every single civilization has depicted dragons.
See,
every single one.
They always talk about seeing dragons on LSD, but I've actually only ever seen dragons on 2CE. 2CE
I've
is another
never thought
mescaline
about
derivative. It's another phenethylamine. And I'm not saying like I was seeing dragons in midair, like fully hallucinating, but the way the visuals were
For sure.
forming, like there was a church across the street from us, and I saw like what looked like a bunch of Aztec dragons, and then on the building we were looking at, like the pattern on the outside, everything looked like Chinese dragons. Like I was happening to see a lot of dragons on 2CE.
So there's very interesting information about like dragons and dinosaurs. So we didn't start calling them dinosaurs until the 1800s. Any kind of large lizard was called a dragon up until the 1800s. So there is an interesting theory that yes, that dinosaurs were considered dragons because that was the word for them back then.
Okay.
So the depictions that we have through historical context, it quite literally could be possible that there were living dinosaurs, like even as late as the medieval period or the Dark Ages. There could have been dinosaurs still walking the planet. If we actually think about it right now, we do have dinosaurs.
Crocodiles.
Yeah. We have Komodo dragons, lizards, crocodiles,
Komodo
alligators.
dragons are
Like-
so interestingly terrifying.
Yeah. But we technically, as human beings, are living with dinosaurs. Not a lot of them, but we are.
Mhm.
So it's not far-fetched to say that 15, 20,000 years ago, I don't know, there might have been a brontosaurus walking around still.
It's possible.
Yeah. So who knows? But it's interesting when I'd seen that, how language changes, and every like 100 years or so, we redefine a word. So we call them dinosaurs, but for thousands of years, they were just called dragons.
Dragosaurs. We should change the name. Dragosaur sounds so much better.
It's strange that Western society annotates everything with Latin prefixes. Tyrannosaurus Rex, it's all just Latin. Oh, I wonder if China and like Asian cultures do that. Do they have a different kind of prefix name?
Don't know.
Interesting. That's a
Oh, that what that was?
yeah.
It sounded like the wind blowing.
No, I've been fasting for like 40 hours, so getting kind of hungry.
I want to do a 3-day water fast here soon.
Oh, that's dangerous.
No, that's not dangerous as long as you're drinking water.
Oh, you mean water will be okay?
Water will be the only thing I intake for.
Oh,
3
I
days.
thought you meant
he
you
might
were
go
going
3
to
days without water.
dehydrate.
No.
Because that's
Man, what's that?
that is a muscular cut thing. That's like what
Yeah, that's what fighters do to
Actors-
suck weight.
in
the
actors will do
UFC.
that whenever you see an actor in a movie with like all of their super defined muscles.
Mhm.
It's because they haven't drank water in 48
Mhm.
hours. That's so dangerous. That's so dangerous.
Yeah, that's probably one of the most dangerous parts of MMA is the weight cutting.
Yeah.
One FC over in Asia, they actually do hydration tests before fights. So like guys that fight at 170 pounds here in the UFC in America, they would fight at 185 pounds over there. They won't allow them to suck the same amount of weight that they do over here because it's more dangerous.
Interesting.
You guys ever sucked on a bunch of nitrous?
Oh, hippie crack?
Oh, yeah. Nitrous can be quite psychedelic if you do big enough amounts.
No.
So, air duster, yes. And the time that it actually did make me loopy and trip, I stopped doing it. I was like, no, I'm not.
Yeah, I've had full out-of-body experiences on just nitrous. I've done nitrous on LSD, and that temporarily shot me out of the matrix for a quick minute. Definitely pretty interesting.
I am not seeing anything about the Latin thing.
What if you were to take a little bit of every psychedelic drug at once?
Jesus Christ. You probably would see Jesus. Like, you absolutely would see Jesus.
I feel like somehow they almost might like cancel each other out a little bit. I'm not positive on that. Don't quote me on that. And I only say that because a lot of psychedelics map to the 5-HT2A receptor in your brain. They do some map to some of the other serotonin receptors. Like I have mixed mushrooms and LSD before at Grassroots one year. And what was interesting about that is mushrooms kind of come in these weird waves. Like you'll have this up wave where like you're tripping real hard. And then all of a sudden it just feels like you're sober again for a couple minutes. And then another wave comes. So when I mixed those two, I felt like the times the mushroom was on the up wave, the mushroom visuals and the mushroom mindset and feelings were more prominent. And then when it would go on a down wave, it's like my visuals would change a little bit and go back to the more LSD visuals, LSD mindset and feeling in my body. So it was like they were like taking turns, taking over.
Oof. Yeah, I was actually just about to ask. So what would be some of the largest differences between like psilocybin and MDMA or LSD? And
So MDMA is more of an empathogen than it is a psychedelic.
what's that mean?
So an empathogen is just something that's going to open you up, make you very empathetic, more touchy-feely, make you want to talk to everybody, just love on everybody
Oh yeah,
even more.
ecstasy. Okay.
So MDA, which goes by the street name SAS, which is just methylene dioxyamphetamine, where MDMA is methylene dioxymethamphetamine. MDA is more psychedelic in nature. There's something that happens on MDA that doesn't on MDMA, and it's the honeycomb visuals. Looking around on MDA, you see like these honeycomb visuals just floating in midair, and they're absolutely beautiful.
So your vision turns like what we theorize a fly's vision is like? Or
No,
you
it's
literally
it's not
just
like
see
that. It's just you see these
polygonal.
you just see these patterns floating in midair. Like it almost looks like you could reach out and touch them even though you can't. I don't know if you've ever seen the video of the housewife in the 1950s on LSD when she's like, I can see the air. I can see it floating in the air. Those would be, the visual patterning you get
I can
from
see
psychedelics.
Smells. I'm just trying to think like, so you just see these shapes floating. It's not like this wall looks like it's made of these shapes.
Correct.
You'll
just see the shapes
around.
on the wall or like floating in midair.
That's so weird.
And
Well, isn't like was it not an octagon? Sectagon?
Hexagon?
Chemical compound structures, what's the common shape? It's a sectagon then? Is it six-sided or?
I'm not sure.
Hexagon.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're hexagonal.
Yeah, 6 sides. You're talking about for molecules?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh no, the
6 sectagons.
Well, the DMT molecule looks to be more. This
Oh,
one,
see, I just looked up MDMA and it's
so
a
there's-
sectagon.
there's 2 on DMT. The very first at the end is hexagonal. The other is pentagonal.
Okay. I was gonna say maybe something like that has to do with it. So like something the reason why the compound or no, it's probably more like we shaped it that way because we see those shapes. Let's see, MDA. It's still just showing MDMA. You bastard, show me MDA. Oh, same, sectagon, 6-sided.
That's a hexagon.
6 sect.
6.
It's a hexagon.
Oh, I'm thinking of 7.
That's 7.
Yeah, okay. Oopsie.
So if somebody wanted to go and experience a psychedelic drug, what would be the safest? Because you've been talking about like environment, and what would be the safest environment for them to do it in?
Usually in their own home. With LSD, I actually take the time to build a whole music playlist that's going to last me through the whole trip. The vibes of the music I like, help with the set and setting. We turn the lights off and then turn our LED lights on. In the comfort of your own home with a good person is best. Tripping alone can also be very good if you're comfortable enough doing it. Out in the middle of the woods, if you got a good place to go where there's not going to be a lot of people, it's another good place because I feel like you really, really feel connected to nature when you're out there. You'll catch yourself just sitting on the ground watching a bug crawl along a stump or something, and like it's just the most fascinating thing you've ever seen in your life, even though you've seen bugs crawling all the time. You get so invested into the bug's life. It's like you're watching a movie.
So this is kind of not off topic, but yeah, kind of a segue thing. Do you think bugs perceive us? Like actually like perceive us as creatures, or
I mean, they definitely perceive we're here.
Well, yeah.
yes, but
But
do they understand
No,
that
they're too stupid.
I don't know though, because I've literally watched a video of a guy that trained his spider, his little pet jumping spider, to give
Yeah.
him knucks. He would
spiders
in
are smart?
multiple videos. He'd stick his finger out and be like, "Give me knucks," and the spider would lift its leg up and touch his finger. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, so the spider's definitely aware that he's there.
But that's more like conditional training, kind of like a dog or a cat. It's
Yeah.
not that they understand the concept. It's that they say, oh, if I do this, I'm going to get a reward kind of thing.
But he didn't even reward the spider with anything.
He probably had in the past to train the spider. Maybe. I don't know.
Or it's just
But
something
spiders-
the spider like doing and he noticed it. And
Yeah. Spiders are considered one of the
But
more
wouldn't that mean the
intelligent-
spider still has to be aware of his existence to be able to do that?
Well, I know.
Yeah, it has been determined that insects can recognize,
Well, yeah.
like arachnids and things like
I
that.
like
They
to think
can
the spiders
recognize
in my
people.
house understand what I'm saying. Because if I catch one up in the corner of my room, like in the living room or something, I'll tell them, "Hey, man, if you stay up there and you don't drop in on me and like sneak up on me, I'll allow you to stay. You can
Do you-
stay. We can be friends."
Do you make eye contact?
Oh yeah,
That's a predatory response.
I
That's
make
all.
I make eye contact when I talk to them.
Yeah, that's a predatory
But they-
you
response.
yell at him.
No, I just I talk to them like they're a person. Hey, you stay up there in the corner, and I'll let you live here rent free. Just don't creep up on me. And they usually don't. They usually respect it.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting if we could like hook up some kind of machine to like an ant, and then we find out ants are like super racist towards termites or something.
So if you guys want to watch some really interesting shit, check out the YouTube channel Ants Canada.
I've seen that. It's
Oh my
interesting.
God, it's so fascinating. Dude's got this
Yeah, his
giant
terrarium is
vivarium.
awesome.
A couple episodes ago, his big huntsman spider, Lady Deathstrike, gave birth, and all the little tiny huntsman spiders were born. Then in the next episode, somehow he didn't fully latch his vivarium door, and Lady Deathstrike, the giant huntsman spider, got out, and luckily he found her in the house 2 days later. Luckily, none of the other animals or insects got outside the vivarium.
I think it's Ants Canada, but he was the one that accidentally introduced a new breed of ants into his terrarium, and it was something like every week they would end up changing colony homes or something from an old tree. It was crazy.
I think
to
you
watch
might be
these
talking about the
ants.
Terror Raiders. I think that's what he named that specific ant
Probably,
colony.
but-
He gives them all names and stuff too,
Yeah.
which is awesome.
But this specific colony took over the old dead stump, and then a week later moved out,
Mhm.
and then a week later moved back in. And just watching these little dudes go.
Yeah, there's
is
been a couple
wild.
times he's accidentally introduced different species to the vivarium, like just bringing in plants and stuff, and somehow there's some of the species on the plant, or
What would be the difference between, you're calling it an avarium?
a vivarium.
A vivarium. So what's the difference between
I think it's-
terrarium and a
I think it's
vivarium?
pretty much kind of like the same thing. Let me go to Google so I don't mince my words here.
The huntsman spiders, they're like the relatively bigger ones. That
Real
are,
big, real fast, and they don't build webs.
Yeah, yep. And they're real good at keeping pests under control that are in your house.
Terrarium, an
I've
enclosure
heard they make good pets.
where very small animals are displayed, often with some plants in a naturalistic setting.
So the difference between the two, it says, though both environments can look very similar in terms of plants and earth, terrariums are designed to raise plants and vivariums are designed primarily to be a habitat for animals.
So, prison. Prison for animals.
It's a good prison life that he gives them, though. You know, they at least
yes.
they got food and the illusion of freedom.
You know what? Freedom with danger over safety with slavery.
I mean, they don't see it as prison. Maybe they do. They were like, man, why can't we go any farther than this?
What is
We
this?
got food.
What is this strange barrier that encases our entire? Oh, that's good evidence as to us.
It's the dome.
that's good evidence for us.
It's the firmament.
So you got something to do with 5, yeah? We're pushing 440.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
So you don't run too close there.
Yeah, we're coming up on 2 hours. We're at 1 hour and 47 minutes.
I want to know why they make these words so fucking hard. MDMA.
Methylene dioxymethamphetamine.
Yeah. That's
Just
more
the
letters than the
chemical name.
English alphabet. Why?
It's
Why?
just the full chemical name. I think it's just breaking down everything that makes up the compound.
But it's Latin as well, and it doesn't need to be.
That's why they give it letters instead of
Yeah, they give
saying
it
the
they
whole
give it
thing.
an acronym because I sure as fuck wouldn't want to say lysergic acid diethylamide 25 every time I mention LSD.
Could you imagine ordering like Advil at the counter? Just some people can't. Acetaminophen. What? Yeah, the stuff with the capsules. God damn it. Interesting. Well, this has definitely been a. There was a lot of words that I definitely didn't understand, and you've practiced them a lot because you were flying through them.
Yeah, you know, maybe it's not the best thing to brag about that I've got a lot of knowledge on street drugs, but
Why not?
I guess it's better to have that knowledge if you're going to be doing those things than to not have the
Online, yeah.
knowledge. That's why earlier I said, you know yourself, know your body, know your mind, know your compound, know your dose.
Maybe you are just one scientist in a larger experiment. That's all.
Like I do believe that, you know, drug use isn't inherently bad. You know, if you can do things responsibly, I don't see an issue with it. Like I used to be all for the decriminalization of all drugs.
Mm.
In recent years,
Seen how bad of an idea that is.
I've kind of stepped back and rethought that because there are certain drugs that are way more addictive and deadly that people seem to just be losing their shit on and overdosing on. However, even when Portugal decriminalized all drugs in 2001, I'm pretty sure they experienced a small spike of overdoses and people being addicted. But then from there, it plummeted downwards to where their addiction rates and overdose deaths are way lower than when drugs were illegal.
Well, look at Canada.
Yeah.
Canada's bad.
Have they decriminalized all drugs?
I think one of the provinces.
Okay, yeah, I know Oregon did. I know they're one of the states that
they're
decriminalized them
conducting
all.
the experiment to see what
And
happens.
it's been 10, I want to say 10 years. Or 7, 8,
You-
9, 10 years, somewhere around there.
What country was it that decriminalized?
Portugal in 2001.
Portugal.
However, fentanyl wasn't big out on the streets when they did this, and that seems to be the biggest issue amongst drug users is the fentanyl.
I wonder what kind of society Portugal is. I'm sure they're not like at the very bottom of the barrel in economic growth or GDP, but a society like America, I don't see full legalization working. And it does also depend on how authorities are allowed to report things.
Mhm.
So one of the greatest examples I can think of in most recent time is Venezuela. They're a socialist society, but they tout some of the greatest numbers for like infant mortality and things like that. But it's been determined through study of their law that you're just not allowed to put on a death certificate as like starvation, dehydration, or like some kind of birth defect as a mortality. So their numbers aren't being truly calculated. So, it's one of those things where depending on how you write things or you determine stuff, information can be construed. So
Mhm.
Oh, no. Canada only decriminalized it a little over a year ago.
Okay.
And it's only until 2026.
So they are
So they're
running like an
conducting an
experiment. They're
experiment.
seeing how it goes.
quite literally.
And it's
See, I don't.
people
I'm.
just passed out in the street.
I won't sit here and condone drug use, not even psychedelics, because as much as I believe or think everyone should have a psychedelic experience, they're definitely not for everybody. Especially if you have like a genetic predisposition to something like schizophrenia or split personality disorder or something like that. But what I will say is kind of like a disclaimer too, just like all the alcohol commercials preach, drink responsibly. Just be responsible if you're ever going to dabble in any street drugs. Know, like I've said twice now, know yourself, know your mind, know your body, know your compound or the substance that you're taking, and know the dose. Buy test kits. MDMA, there's quite a few things that get pushed off as MDMA that are not MDMA. Butylone and methylone seem to be the most common. It's not that they're super dangerous, taking like the same milligram per milligram dose as MDMA, but they're extremely boring. You'll get burned, and just it's not the same. So if you got a test kit, you can test your stuff and make sure it is what it's supposed to be. You can get those online at somewhere like Dance Safe. I can't remember what the other website is, but yeah, just be responsible. I've even been irresponsible myself, and I learned from those experiences. So be responsible.
And if you can, I'm not sure if New York has this program, but there are several states that do. Get yourself a Narcan pen, just in case. You never know what's going to happen,
Sadly, you're kind of right, because there was somewhere up in Canada, somebody sent a LSD tab or a blotter paper to a lab, and it actually tested positive for carfentanil, which is even more potent than fentanyl.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's why I kind of only trust one source to get my stuff where I get it from. It's very good. It's very clean. And I'm definitely high maintenance when it comes to the substances I'm using. I want them to be very pure, very clean, potent.
Oh, there was something I did want to add. So we have historical references of like opium dens, especially in Eastern society, Eastern cultures, Asia, things like that. So opium, of course, it got the name opium, and that's where we derive opiates from. They have the same effect, right? It's like a downer. Like opiates are a derivative of opium.
So let me try not to get these confused. There's opiates and then there's opioids. And I'm pretty sure the opiates are all found in the opium plant. There's morphine, there's codeine.
That's where
And
heroin kind of comes
heroin
from. Yes,
heroin
okay.
comes from there, even though
So-
you have to do a process to create the heroin.
The downers, the ones that create the heroin.
The downers, the ones
And-
that make you just kind of slouch and blah,
and
blah, blah.
Opiates or opioids or anything that map to the opioid receptors in your brain, such as kratom. What's in kratom is not an opiate, but it is an opioid. It contains mitragynine and 7-hydroxymitragynine. And kratom's quite interesting. At low doses, it gives you like this energy and it's like a mood booster. And at higher doses, it puts you down and is more of a painkiller. So it's quite interesting how that works, how it can give you both energy or put you down depending on the dose you take.
Right.
And my normal dose of kratom is usually somewhere between like 2.5, 3 grams.
I just wanted to bring that up because so it's one of those things where decades ago we outlawed like opium dens. It was actually kind of popular in like the California territories in the early years.
Well, shit, man, heroin used to be popular in cough medicine.
Right. And things like that. And then we started regulating and outlawing these things.
Mm-hmm.
But just recently, in the last 60, 70 years, we gave them loopholes. Oh, well, now it's in your medicine.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Oh, you've got back pain? Here's morphine. Literally concentrated opium.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be more open to taking prescription drugs off the shelves and letting people just smoke opium.
Well, you could even make tea with opium and drink it, and it usually lasts longer when you ingest it compared to smoking it.
There we go.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather have us go back to a purer form of these types of substances rather than these super concentrated manufactured billionaire constructs. I absolutely understand that no matter what kind of substance it is, eventually there's going to be den heads and things like that. People who just can't handle it.
There's one issue with these natural substances. You can grow them yourself so they can't capitalize on them.
Yeah, that's true.
How does opium tea taste?
Damn capitalism.
Opium's actually one of the few drugs that I've never been able to try. I was offered heroin back in the day and I turned it down. Heroin's the only drug I've actually ever turned down. In 2013, I think it was, I was offered some and I was like, I like opiates a little too much. And then I got offered this after I had already done psychedelics. So I feel like had I not done psychedelics, I probably would have been dumb enough to try the heroin. But since I had already done psychedelics, something told me like, hey, yeah, you like opiates a little too much. And if you go down that road, it's going to be dangerous for you. So, you know, just have the wonder and wonder what it's like, but never actually know for yourself. I mean, it might be possible I have the willpower to try it once and put it down. I've done that with other things that, you know,
Many people
could,
can't. That's the problem.
You know, I've toyed around with things that are very addictive, and I got to a point on those things where I felt like I hit a wall where, okay, now you need to up your dose to get the same effect. And once you start to do that, you're going to go beyond this wall where there may not be a point of return. Like, you might go beyond that point of no return. So I got what I could from this compound. Now let me, you know, put it down. I've experienced it. I know what it's about, and I'm done with it.
Fair. Not a lot of people have that kind.
That too.
It's just some of the effects that these drugs have on your brain in general. A lot of people don't notice what it does to your psyche. It changes you.
Adderall.
And a lot of people do not understand it.
Adderall did that to me, and it took me 3 years of being on it to realize, holy shit, this chemical changed me. It changed my relationships with people. It changed the way that I react to things, and it took me
the person I recognize or I remember.
And it took me almost a full year of being off the Adderall to actually feel like myself again. So
it is crazy how it rebalances your brain,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't even notice it. You don't until you do.
Yeah, because
Like,
it's usually a gradual change in.
But it's
It's
the
already
same
normal by
thing
that
with
time.
That's how I've described it. It was such a slow change. I didn't notice it happening over the time that it happened.
it's the same thing with addicts. We've all seen people, you know, they put up photos of themselves of when they were dirty, and it's like you see yourself now. Like back then when you took that photo, you looked normal. You didn't see anything wrong. Your brain made you perceive you as you are. But now looking back, you're like, how did I let myself get that place? It's not that you let yourself. It's that a drug took over and convinced your brain that it didn't matter how you looked. It didn't matter how unhealthy you were. All that mattered was, can I get high? Can I feel this feeling again?
And that
It's
might be one of the
dangerous.
good things about psychedelics, because even when you have a pretty intense experience, not so much a bad one, but one that can be intense, you're like, yeah, man, that was such an amazing experience, but I think I'm good for a month or two. Let me make sense of this. Let me integrate what I learned into my daily life before I'm ready to go again.
Oh yeah, I guess one of the things we didn't really touch on is I don't think it can be addictive. Is it like, can you become addicted to psychedelics?
Physically, no, but it's hard for me to argue against the fact that anything could become a psychological addiction.
But it's not.
I mean, as
it's
simple.
it's very uncommon at the very least.
Especially because, too, like something like LSD, if I were to take one hit tonight and I wanted to trip again tomorrow night, I would need to take 2 hits to get the same effect. If I wanted to trip the night after that, I'd have to take 4 hits to get the same effect. And then 8 hits the next night.
How long
16.
do you have to wait in between to where it refreshes?
So I usually always tell people wait at least 2 weeks for the best peaks.
Do you think maybe that's how marijuana started, though? That because people had such, because it's not as strong of a drug, but if you don't do it for extensive periods of time, a little bit will get you really, really high.
Yes, this
So
is
it
what I
became
like.
more normative.
This is what I like
Same
about
thing
my
with
tolerance
sugar.
breaks.
We've become a society that uses sugar in basically everything. Where if we took sugar out of everything, just after like a month, a very minuscule amount of sugar would make everything just so sweet, it'd be sickening.
Yeah.
That's how it is with my tolerance breaks with cannabis. Is if I, take a little tolerance break and then come back and do a dab, it's very much a trippy, somewhat psychedelic experience that I'm having in my mind, and I almost like using it that way more.
Yeah.
But what do you say we wrap this one
We
up?
wrap them up.
Yep, sounds good to me. If you guys are still listening, thank you. A lot of people don't get to the 2-hour mark in a lot of videos, but
Oh, really? Well,
I don't watch a full video.
oh.
Most people don't. Most people 20. What's the average watch time? 36 minutes, I think, when I looked at the.
Is it?
Something like that, yeah. But yeah, thank you guys. This was a good learning experience, even though we didn't understand most of what was going on. Yeah,
It's
but
difficult.
yeah, if you didn't like the video already, like it, smash that like button, subscribe, tell your friends. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week.
And drugs are bad, okay?
Yeah.
Drugs are bad, okay.
Except some psychedelic ones, they're pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Goodbye. I almost forgot.